What is Galatians really about? Well, ask most Christians and you'll get a quick answer. It's easy. Galatians is Paul's bold rejection of the law, and it's his passionate argument that salvation is found in Christ alone. In other words, Galatians is often read as Paul's final word against Judaism and a declaration that the law is a spiritual dead end. But that's a major misunderstanding. Yes, in Galatians, Paul is opposing something, but it's not Judaism, and it's definitely not the Torah. What Paul is really pushing back against is the idea that Gentile followers of Jesus must be circumcised in order to become full, legitimate members of God's family. Paul makes this clear in Galatians 5, verse 2, when he writes, "Look, I, Paul, say to you that if you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no benefit to you." In other words, Gentiles who embrace circumcision after coming to faith in Christ end up cutting themselves off from Christ. Now, to be clear, Paul isn't rejecting circumcision across the board, and he's certainly not opposing it for Jews. Paul affirms Jewish circumcision in multiple places in the New Testament, and he does so most clearly in Romans chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, when he states that circumcision is valuable for Jews in every way. So in Galatians, Paul opposes the very specific idea that Gentile Christ followers need to undergo circumcision to be justified before God. And a term Paul uses to represent this idea that he opposes is the Greek phrase erga, nomou, often translated works of the law. Now, that phrase can be misleading, and it may lead to the incorrect conclusion that Paul is opposing the law. But as Pauline scholar Mark Nanos points out, a better translation of erga nomou might be customary rites. Why? Because the Torah itself doesn't command circumcision for Gentiles except in the narrow case of household slaves, like we see with Abraham's household. So Paul's opposition was towards those promoting this innovative custom to circumcise Gentiles, which Torah doesn't legislate. For Paul, Gentiles are not included in Abraham's family through the model for slaves. Rather, they are included miraculously through the promise realized in Christ. So again, in Galatians, Paul doesn't oppose Torah, and he doesn't oppose circumcision. He's confronting a custom not found in Torah that would undermine the identity of his Gentile Christ followers. Now, why does this matter? Well, it matters because when we misread Galatians as anti-Torah and anti-circumcision, we not only misrepresent Paul, we build unnecessary barriers between Jews and Christians. For too long, Galatians has been misread and misused as a text that dismisses Judaism. But Paul didn't write Galatians to cancel Judaism. He wrote it to reinforce to Gentiles that their standing in God's family was thoroughly secure through their trust in Christ's faithfulness. And putting Galatians back in its context reveals not a Paul who rejected Judaism, but a Paul who remained deeply committed to it as a follower of Christ. Hey, if you'd like to learn more about Paul and his Jewish and Greco-Roman context, check out my book, The Weird Apostle. You can find it on Amazon. And don't miss out on any of my new content by subscribing wherever you're watching or listening. And if you'd like to learn more about how to build bridges between Jews and Christians, check out bridgebuildersforum.com.